Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Captain's Chat. My name is Joe Delagrave. I am one of the captains at USA Wheelchair Rugby, and super excited to be joined today by Emily Shryock, longtime player in our league, and has been spearheading getting more women involved over the last decade, really. So super excited to talk to her today. Emily has worn a lot of hats within our sport. She currently, as her job, is working as an assistant director for students with disabilities at UT. In that office, I probably butchered that name, but definitely, basically, her day job is helping people with disabilities get through school at the UT, whether it's accessibility or access to tests or whatever else goes on in that office. She's worked as a former second vice president of the US QRA board as a volunteer, which I did it for a year. And it's a thankless job, and a lot of work goes into it. As a second VP, there's a lot of fundraising, so there were dollars when she was in there. It was directly because of the work that she did, and so that's always awesome as well. She was a Force team member back when we had Force in 2008 through 2012, and has been spearheading, and like I said before, spearheading the Wonder Women team and some of the women's only camps that U of H has ran over the years. So just been an advocate for our sport with women and with everyone in our sport on the national level and in a little bit internationally as well. So without further ado, Emily, how you doing?
Hello, Joe. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love I love bragging on people. It's kind of fun. I get really humble when I someone else wants to do it for me, but it's really fun to brag on other people. So I like that.
Yeah, it's been fun to take a trip down memory lane and kind of think back on all the different opportunities I've had because of wheelchair rugby.
Yeah, kind of crazy, right? It's been a long time since I think I met you back in when you were playing with Indy, 2007, 8, something like that. Yeah. So it's been a long journey, but pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So how has everything been? How is I guess talking about your day job with UT, how is the whole 2020 been at work and what that looks like, and how has it affected people with disabilities on campus, off campus?
Yeah, so like everyone else, we had a really quick transition going from, kind of business as usual to all of a sudden having to switch everything online. Of course, one of our big concerns was making sure that accessibility was considered as, as things went virtual. So our office did a lot of work making sure our own policies and procedures and accommodations were, still available, but also providing support to the broader university, making sure that the new technology and way things were being done considered access. So it was an exciting time, exhausting, just a lot of changes that happened really quickly that normally probably would have taken years to accomplish when you're talking about a big university. So it was, the positive side was seeing people really pull together and make sure that students still had the support and the access to their education.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's crazy. Was there did that take a little while to kind of develop or get into a normal flow, like you talked about, business as usual is being completely shut down right away? How was that transition?
Well, luckily we'd already laid a lot of the groundwork in our office with already kind of going paperless, so this just gave us the final kick to go that extra step that we needed. And of course, online classes existed before at the university, so this was rolling them out at a larger scale. One thing that's been interesting that we've heard from students is that in some ways, making things virtual has made things more accessible. But then, of course, for other folks and in other reasons, it's been less accessible. So that's been an interesting conversation. Now that folks aren't having to travel to inaccessible buildings, to go to office hours or events, they're all online. So realizing the positives that have come out of this, as well as certainly a lot of negatives and a lot of tragedy throughout the whole pandemic. And so what we're starting to think about now is how do we have conversations to make sure that some of the positive things that have come out of this stick around. So moving more from just a short-term mindset of here's what we're doing in the moment to as we look forward to whenever and whatever kind of our our new normal is going to be, how do we make sure that we keep the good parts, particularly when it relates to accessibility?
Yeah, it's a great point, that the positive in it. And I think a lot of people take a look at the positives of technology and the accessibility of it, and then kind of like weighing it against the need for us as humans to relate with each other emotionally, which can be done like this, but can be done probably better in a room physically. But there's always that weighing of, positivity and accessibility versus isolation, what that does to a person as well. And it's always tough. Speaking of, personally with the pandemic, how has quarantine been for you? Or how has this whole pandemic season and 2020 been for you on a personal level?
So it was interesting timing. So my disability is a condition that goes through periods of relapse and remission. So I was actually pretty sick for the second half of fall 2019 and into spring. And I literally was just getting ready to return to work full time in March. Like on Monday, told my boss, like, all right, I think I'm ready. And then Friday, everything shut down and we went home. So interesting timing. I'd been at home, not able to do much. And then of course the pandemic hit, and now I'm still at home, not able to do much. But I've really been able to use this time to recover a lot of strength, kind of get back into some of my activities. So been hard in a lot of ways, but again, there have been, some positives, and just giving me the time that I need to get back at it, and more than ready to get back out there and do all the things that for me, now it's been almost a full year of being at home and not been able to get out and about. So interesting timing with that.
Yeah, no kidding. What have you learned about yourself in that time?
One thing is that I'm really good at entertaining myself. So just knowing how to keep busy. I think also the value of connections. When you're kind of out and about in your daily life, you're making all these connections, following up with people without necessarily having to put in the same amount of effort, that now we have to intentionally reach out and make connections, because we're not kind of naturally seeing people in the activities or the ways that we did before. So really, finding out who are the folks that you really want to maintain those connections with, and having to make the effort, prioritizing. I've connected with a lot of folks that I haven't chatted with for a really long time, because now our schedules are almost a little bit more available. So that's been a really nice thing to be able to catch up and have conversations, kind of reconnect some friendships that had, we just kind of lost touch over the years.
Yeah. Has your roles like at school changed, or is it like different doing it from afar? Is it pretty much the same thing with as far as your job as an assistant director?
The tasks that I'm doing are still the same. It's just virtual now. So one of the most challenging things for me has been doing virtual presentations. You just don't get the same energy and connection with folks. So that's something we're still doing them. We still want to provide that training and education. But I really do miss that ability to gather folks in a room and have conversation and, read body language and feed off each other's energy. So I'm glad we're chugging forward, but I am definitely looking forward to those in-person interactions and connections we can make.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me back to like kind of the beginning. You talked a little bit about having a different disability than a lot of people in our community. And so over the years, there's been what kind of disability does she have? Or what, and you know how our community is. And so like how did you get hurt and or sick, or I don't like with whatever like Lyme disease is what you got, right?
Yeah. Yep. So that's my diagnosis. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that happen? And then how did that morph into getting involved with adaptive sports?
So I, started having a lot of strange symptoms that continued to progress until I got to the point where I needed to use a wheelchair full time. And when that happened, and it kind of became clear that this was going to be my new reality, I wanted to find a way to stay active. I've always been, a very active person, involved in sports. So I really wanted to maintain that. So I'd reached out to our local rehab hospital, and just said like, hey, what are our options? And they said, oh, well, it's rugby season. Here's the address, here's the date, here's the time, go check it out. And I'd never heard of wheelchair rugby before. I think I watched a few YouTube videos before I went out to practice. I really didn't know anything about it. Went out to the first practice, and I always say I'm amazed I went back, just because it was something very different than I'd ever experienced before. Of course, I was the only woman who was there, but was really just really welcomed by the whole team, the Indy Quad Squad at the time. And just realized that this was an opportunity to regain a part of my life that I thought I had lost. So being able to be active, to crash into each other. I think when you first start using a wheelchair, you realize all the things that you've lost and you can't do. Often feeling very fragile or kind of unsafe, and so being thrown into a rugby chair and all of a sudden you have this, feel like you're invincible again. You have this confidence. That was just a huge selling point to me. So, it was always funny to look back and see like how much of a major impact rugby's had on my life, and got involved really in a very kind of coincidental way.
Yeah, no kidding. That's, do you think, like you say you didn't want to go back, or like, are you surprised that you went back because it was so different? But like, how old were you at the time when you started using a wheelchair full time? And how was that being, it sounds like it was a welcoming environment being the only woman there, but how was that for you with kind of navigating that whole identity piece? And then you're a woman playing a predominantly male sport. Like what's been your strategy to kind of just, I've known you as always being intense, being a competitor, not being scared to ruffle feathers within whoever it is. It's like holding your own. But how was that for you with trying to form that identity with being a woman in a wheelchair?
It was something that took a long time. And I think I formed my identity more as like, all right, a person with a disability, and then like, what does that mean to be a woman with a disability? And that was, something that I didn't get that female perspective, through rugby. There were a few athletes playing at the time, but not many female athletes. So I was learning a lot of really helpful things from my teammates, how to transfer in and out of your car, like what is all the cool wheelchair features you need, just kind of those daily living things. But it really took a while to be able to build that same connection with other women. And I'm very, very grateful now that we have a more of a structure for women to make those connections through the sport of wheelchair rugby. And I think that's one reason that I'm really passionate about it, is because that's something that I didn't have. And I think it would have been really, really helpful for me at that time where I was navigating kind of all these changes to my identity and figuring out, what that means for me. So being able to kind of pay that forward to folks who are getting involved now really is something that means a lot to me.
Yeah. There's been a lot of work with you guys doing women's only camps. You've done tournaments overseas. You've done tournaments here with the Wonder Women. How has that experience been for you? You've gotten to coach, you've gotten to play, you've gotten to mentor, you got like a lot of different hats within that. How has that been for you?
It's been very exciting to see some kind of more formal opportunities for women in wheelchair rugby to compete as a group of women. So most, women are maybe the only woman on their teams, on their local club teams. So being able to come together as a pickup team, we've gone to the Metal and Muscle tournament a few times, the Chicago Bear Brawl, and it's just been really great to see how tournament directors have really welcomed us. Other athletes have been supportive, and then just that camaraderie that we've been able to build as a team, the Wonder Woman team. We've got a Facebook page where we can chat, share resources and ideas. So it's really started out, fairly small, and it's been excited to see how much that has grown and how many opportunities there are for women now to connect. Certainly wish there were more, but I think we're heading in the right direction. And when we get back to competing, I'm excited to pick up where we left off with that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome to be able to coach alongside with you at one of the Houston camps where they had a men's camp and then a women's camp, and to see what it meant to women being able to just have a women's only, like, I think that camp was you and Carrie, Morgan coaching, and all the women. I think just having a more raw sense of vulnerability with women coaches, because the relatability was there. And there's a lot of, like, just like for me, when I first started playing, I could talk to whoever about some really personal issues, like whether it's, going to the bathroom and things like that. And so where guy to girl, that conversation might be weird at times, or maybe it's normal, but I think having a woman to woman conversation, you could just see like that. A lot of those women, really, it meant a lot for them to be able to go to this camp, to be able to have that relatability and share that maybe extra sense of vulnerability with you guys, not only on the rugby court, but off it. And so I just think it's pretty amazing, but it gets me into our first game of the day, which is going to be in light of the Wonder Women name, a little bit of some Wonder Women trivia. So I'm going to do a little quiz for you here. See if I can stump you, or we'll just teach people today a little bit about Wonder Women. So, first question is, who created Wonder Woman? And a little hint, they also invented the lie detector test.
Oh. Okay, I did not realize this came from the person. And do I get a phone a friend option here?
No, unless someone's going to put it in the comments really quick. Any guesses?
I do not have a guess.
Okay. So William Moulton Marston created the Wonder Woman and invented the lie detector test. I guess lie detector test appeared in the early Wonder Woman stories, but most importantly, Wonder Woman's lasso of truth was originally a kind of lie detector.
Oh, okay. I can see the overlap there.
Who inspired the Wonder Woman's iconic bracelets?
Ooh. I don't know that either. You sent me all the questions to prepare for. You didn't send me my topics.
No, these are my secret questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess one of Marston's wives was inspired the bracelets, where he was legally married to one woman, but he also had 2 children with Olive Brine, who lived with him until his death. And she wore a bracelet on each wrist to symbolize their relationship. So that's where the bracelets came from. Crazy.
Okay. Well, I can say that we do not have bracelets as part of the Wonder Woman uniform. We do have some pretty awesome looking uniforms with glitter and a sparkly W. So we'll have to have a chat with the team about the feasibility of adding golden bracelets to our uniforms.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. True or false? Wonder Woman was the first female member of the Justice Society, a precursor to the Justice League. True or false?
Oh, let's go with true.
That is true. You're on the board.
I got
one. Let's see if I can get one more that's decently
easy.
Decently easy, yeah. Gold tape for gloves. Josh missed gold tape for. Oh yeah, you can do gold tape for gloves.
All right.
I can't reach the internet right now. Check your modem or router connection and try again.
Apparently, Google thought I was talking to her.
I can't reach the internet.
No, I'm not
right
talking
now.
to you, Google.
Check your modem or router connection and try again.
Okay, so last one. Who was one of Wonder Woman's original nemesis? And this person was inspired by a professor of Marston's who felt that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. The original nemesis, Dr. Psycho. Psycho. I have no idea what these were beforehand, so I'm right along there with you. I'm yeah.
All right. Well, apparently for Wonder Woman, part of our next tournament pregame meetings, we'll add some Wonder Woman trivia.
I think so. Yeah. You can be like, we're not going to do jump balls for the ball. We're going to do Wonder Woman trivia, and if we beat you, then we get the ball. Yeah. No, well, that was fun. Thanks for following along there. with some of those hard questions.
Yeah, thanks for giving a little history lesson there.
Yeah, for sure. So a little bit before, we're discussing opportunities in reference with like U of H and different different international tournaments, and getting to see the growth of that. What do you think? What do you think needs to happen to continue having that growth? Where does the league need to get better? How do we need to come along and support women in the league? What can we do better from like a male dominant audience or participation? And how do we get that with coming alongside the women in the sport?
So one thing that we've seen a lot of in the sport is women who come and then they leave. So I think there's definitely a retention issue when it comes to women in wheelchair rugby. And there's, certainly a number of reasons for that, just like there are for any athlete. Life changes, just things come up. But understanding what it's like to be the only woman who shows up to a practice, and for a lot of women, that's just going to be a very intimidating environment. Whereas if you're the second woman or the third woman, who comes onto that team, you see yourself reflected, you kind of are able to make an easier connection. So the numbers, when women go to a tournament and they don't see any, female athletes competing, they probably don't think, oh, this is something that I could get into. Versus if you go to a tournament and you see, women competing, you're able to see yourself represented and reflected in that. So I think the numbers and recruitment is one challenge, but then also retention and making sure that women do feel safe and valued on their teams. I've certainly had experiences where on the court, I'm valued and supported as an athlete, but it's the off the court, conversations and interactions where I often felt that distance or that kind of disconnection. So, being the only woman in what sometimes, feels like a male locker room isn't always a great experience. So, for guys to understand how you can make sure that the women on your team feel valued and welcomed and supported, and what that means, is a conversation that's important to have, because it's not just about introducing women to the sport, it's making sure that they have a positive experience and then want to continue in that.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of advice. And I think you've been able to have the experience to see that, whether it's club team, whether it's on Team Force, whether it's in your work as a second VP, in your work with going over to teach some Russians the sport of wheelchair rugby, being at the IWF assembly as a member, as a representative for USQRA, now USAWRA. I always got to remember to say that. But what throughout all those different experiences, and again, thank you for being so adamant about growing that, whether it's in the USQRA, USWRA now, or IWF, or your local club team, or whatever it is, like Wonder Women. All those experiences, what do you think is keeping us, besides the retention? I mean, the answer that you just gave was awesome. And I think retention, specifically to feeling left out or feeling isolated off the court, makes a lot of sense. But what do you think is the biggest piece holding us back? Is it just numbers, or do you think if you had more camps with U of H that would go better as far as retention goes, or what do you think is holding us back?
I think numbers are a big part of it. So in order for us to, get a team together to play as Wonder Woman, it gets challenging because, women are playing on their own local teams. And so then we have to figure out, schedules and finances. So that's something that's hard. It's often hard enough to get enough folks to field a local team. And now you're trying to, field a team of women. You're pulling from a much smaller pool. So the opportunities that we have to connect usually involve, folks flying. That's a expense that's not supported by their local team typically, because it's not, part of their team. So that's been a challenge that we've really faced, is how do you find the time and finances to bring women together to have those opportunities, because it's just numbers wise, it's really hard to get those in local areas. So the University of Houston summer camps for women have been great. And then we did have the opportunity to travel to the World Women Cup, as an international experience, bringing together women from all over the world. So numbers and money, I think, are challenges. And then also, I think more broadly as a sport, it's often thought of as a male sport. And as women, it's like we're allowed to play it rather than this is our sport. This is collectively our sport. So when I come into a team, that it's this feeling of like, well, yeah, we'll kind of like tolerate you, we'll let you come, but not realizing changes that need to be made in order to make everyone feel like they are equally valued and welcomed. That their input and ideas and their leadership as an athlete is equally valued. Regardless of gender. And those are all things that I've experienced in positive ways. Those are also all things that I've experienced negatively. So those are just some changes that I think we need to think about, rather than being it is a male dominated sport, but it's not a sport that belongs to men and women are allowed to play it. It's a sport for all of the community. And so shifting that mindset, I think, is one thing that would help create better interactions for women and feeling equal to their male teammates and competitors.
Yeah. Wow. That was good. That was like a Sunday sermon right there. That was really good. And kind of what I was thinking of too, is like agents of change or change agents, and it doesn't happen with policy, it happens with behavior. And so what you're saying hits home, and certainly I can do a better job of it as well. And kind of sending that message along with people. And you're absolutely right.
And I don't remember. I don't know if you remember this, but this happened at nationals one time. It was after game, and you came up to me afterwards and you told me, "Wow, you really pushed your balls off." Do you remember that?
Well, I remember that.
Yeah, and then you came back later and you're like, "That was inappropriate to say."
Yeah.
So it's those types of interactions that, on its own, like I just, shrugged it off and moved on. But that's the type of example that, in all the teams that I've been on, I've been so insistent that you can't say, "Come on, boys," or "Come on, men." I am not a boy. I am not a man. So when you say like, "Let's go, everybody," but you're leaving out somebody who's right in front of you, so that was always my position. I was okay with guys, like, "Let's go, guys." I feel like that's kind of morphed into more of a kind of gender neutral term. But just acknowledging how much that happened of "Good job, boys, good job, men." And I'm right there like, did I not contribute to this opportunity? So just those types of things, being aware of how you're continually reinforcing that idea that this is about men, and as a woman, we're just kind of a tag along or along for the ride, rather than a meaningful part of the sport or the team.
Yeah, and you've known me long enough where I can stick my foot in my mouth real quick, like I did that day, and thankfully I had the balls to go and say sorry. But no, I think kind of what I was thinking of just now, and because I think a lot of women are different, where some women will say something, most probably won't, because if I'm thinking the opposite, if I'm around 15 different women and I'm the only guy there, like, am I going to say something? Probably not. Like, probably not. I'm intimidated or scared to say something stupid, or like if I stand up for myself, now am I completely isolating myself even more? And so, like, have you experienced some of that where maybe the situation goes, I really want to say this and stand up for this, and sometimes you have, but other times going like, I really want to play the sport, and so maybe I didn't have the opportunity to say what I wanted to say, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. So I think for me, it became a matter of pick your battles. I'm one person. I knew I wasn't going to be able to change, the entire league. I wasn't even going to be able to change, the attitudes and behavior of all my teammates, whoever those were at the time. So it's kind of like pick what's most important to you. And for me, it was that language thing, which might seem like a maybe silly thing to pick, but I wanted it to be, I wanted that to be acknowledged. And over time, the folks that I've had a chance to play with, like, probably know that, and their behavior did change. So it's that balance of, you have to take care of yourself, and you can't always be the one fighting. And like you said, being an ally is a huge part of that. So making sure that women have somebody that they feel safe talking to. So if somebody does raise a concern, that's taken seriously, and it's not something that is belittled or demeaned or devalued, because that's not going to make somebody want to have those conversations for change. So throughout my times, I definitely would always identify who are the guys on my team that I feel safe going to with questions or concerns. Who do I want to intentionally pick a spot to get ready for a game or debrief afterwards, because I knew there were certain groups of people that I didn't want to be around, because of those types of strained interactions, versus other folks who I knew were going to be more receptive and respectful of the fact that I was a woman and I didn't want to be part of those conversations. So you're exactly right. It's not going to be one person, and everybody does have a role to play in listening and being receptive to ways that we can improve as a sport. Because as we're starting to see, we've got a lot of really competitive, talented women, and we want them to stick around. We want more to get involved, and that's only going to happen if there's an opportunity for them to feel like they are being valued and respected in the sport.
Yeah, French Wonder Women. Yeah, like the Medal of Muscles, like the home tournament for Wonder Women, I feel like.
It is. Yeah, we're super excited that they've been so welcoming, and it's been so fun to see even for fans what the reaction has been. They see a sport that seems to be all guys, and all of a sudden you've got this all female team rocking it or trying to rock it. We've got cool uniforms, at least. So it really has been great to see the support there is for that. It just has to make sure that support is also seeping down to that individual level.
Well, yeah, not to be like too rainbows and butterflies about it, but like that, like I don't think the wins are necessarily, if you have more points on the board at the end of the game, it's maybe the woman that showed up to watch, and there's an entire team of women playing. Like, it doesn't, like, they're out there pushing hard, they're out there competing together. And I think that's a powerful image for maybe a new person to see, a new woman to see and go, oh wow, there's a spot for me, there's a place for me. And Brant brings up a great point that you made, is creating those safe spaces within a team dynamic. It's so huge, and needs to happen. I know, like, right now on the national team, we're doing that a lot with Liz, and trying to figure out, hey, are we creating a spot for you to succeed in? Are we creating an environment for you to succeed in? And something that's always in the back of my head, because like you mentioned, I do put my foot in my mouth sometimes. But hey, she might be hanging around staff a lot more because we have staff that are women that she can relate to, and that's okay. Like, it's going to be different than maybe the same exact person but male in her position. It's just going to be a different experience. So I want to talk a little bit about your international experience with the trip to Russia that happened. What, about 4 years ago?
Yeah. Yep. In 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. The trip to Russia, and then maybe talking about what you learned being in attendance at the IWRF assembly, which is basically kind of similar to what a general assembly would be with the USWRA.
Yeah. So I certainly love this sport and competing in rugby, but it also has been really interesting to have opportunities outside of the competition aspect. So I was invited to participate as part of a sports diplomacy program in 2016 through the State Department to go to Moscow and work with the Russian wheelchair rugby team. So that was just an incredible experience. They didn't speak English, we didn't speak Russian, and our interpreter didn't know anything about wheelchair rugby. So, explaining to our interpreter what a key is, so that he can, appropriately interpret that in Russian. We had some laughs and some good times with that. But it was also amazing to see that even, without speaking the same language, how much we were able to convey through pointing and, demonstrating and, acting, role playing on the court. But it was just really incredible to work with those athletes, to realize what life is like in a country that doesn't have, laws for accessibility. Part of what we were doing was working with the Russian team, but we were also working, out in the community, sightseeing. As our hosts were telling us, people with disabilities don't really have those opportunities to kind of live life and go about their, what we would consider normal activities. So when we were, visiting all these tourist sites, they warned us, like, you're probably going to get some looks and stares, because they've probably never seen, somebody with a physical disability out in, in some of these spaces, let alone a, group of 6 of us. So it was an opportunity to do some education in that way. But also, I think all of us really learned a lot about, policy and the impact that has for our daily lives, and things that we, can complain about or take for granted here, really just don't exist. One of the athletes from the Russian team I talked about, after he got hurt, he lived up on like the 20th floor of an apartment building or something that didn't have an elevator. So he would only go outside like once or twice a year when somebody could carry him downstairs. So, just those types of stories, and realizing how much work there has to be done for people with disabilities, across the world. And we've certainly got our own issues and need to improve here, but realizing that that's a real area for improvement, that other folks in those countries may not even have kind of what we consider that basic level of access. But overall, just a really incredible experience. We went to a couple different universities and got to chat with some of their students. So I think a learning opportunity for everyone, and certainly, the tensions between our countries have, changed a little bit since 2016. But really having the opportunity to make those connections on an individual level was something that, they really, one of the goals of the trip. And now to be able to, watch the Russian team compete in some of the, European tournaments, it's really fun to, know who they are, know their names. Having competed against them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Incredible. What about the IWF assembly attendance? What was the experience like that? Kind of taking a step back from the court and mentoring and coaching and playing to seeing the sport in a bigger picture. What was that experience for you?
Yeah, so that was really exciting to even meet some of the people who are behind the scenes. Normally when I travel internationally, you're meeting the coaches and the athletes and the support staff. So, just to meet the IWRF staff, to meet the, representatives from the different countries and see the work that they're doing to build their leagues and teams in their country was really exciting. That was in November, December 2016. So we're getting a lot of updates on Tokyo, and just to realize how much work is being done, so far in advance, to put that all together and make that work, to see the work that's being done to develop wheelchair rugby in other countries is really exciting. Again, you take a country that may not have basic accessibility laws, and you're like, hey, let's go in and start wheelchair rugby. Realizing what a powerful impact that sport can have as a tool to increase folks' independence and access. So a lot of the folks that I met at the General Assembly, still stay in touch with on Facebook, folks that, I probably wouldn't have met through competition, but excited to see so many folks who are putting in the effort behind the scenes to make sure that our sport grows really on that global level.
Yeah, awesome. Unique experience for sure. Well, you've had quite an incredible journey from the Indy Quad Squad to what you do now, and all the advocacy you've done along the way. And a lot of athletes, I think, and we touched on this a little bit lately. I had a conversation with Judge when he was on, and about the I word, and finding there's cheap inspiration, there's inspiring people, and you're certainly an inspiring person. But what do you find? What is truly inspiring to you after all the years that you've been in the community and the work you've put in? What truly inspires Emily?
I think it's the connection between people, that all of us are coming from very different places and life experiences and disability, and yet we're able to find that common experience of living in a world not designed for us, living in a world that doesn't always see our capabilities or the value that we bring, and often having to overcome some pretty traumatic, significant life changes. That's what we have in common. And so that's one of the things that I really value is, being able to meet somebody for the first time on the corridor, on the bus to the hotel, and just having that shared connection or understanding, even though this is a person, that I might not really have anything else in common, that's something that we have in common. And through that, I think it's a desire to uplift other folks. So I love seeing when somebody new, rolls into rugby for the first time, just how welcoming and supportive everyone usually is really kind of taking them under their wing, not just as an athlete, but as a person. Here's a better way to do this. Have you ever thought about doing that? I love seeing that desire to bring this person into the community and help them live more independent, more fulfilled life. And that's something that I don't get in a lot of the other communities that I'm part of. And so I think being able to have that shared experience that goes beyond our differences, especially in these times, is something that I really value and has really contributed to me maintaining a lot of connections and relationships with folks that otherwise I probably would never even have met, or maybe even have had that sustained connection.
Yeah. What would you say to yourself back when you first were using a wheelchair for the first time? What would be the advice you give yourself way back when you first started playing?
It'd be like, hold on, you've got a wild ride ahead of you. So many of the experiences I never would have, even imagined. I mean, going to Russia on a sports diplomacy trip, being, a representative at the IWF General Assembly, even moving down to Texas was because of rugby. So many choices that I made have been influenced by rugby. I've been now working at the university for 10 years. I was specifically looking for a job in Austin, Texas, because of the opportunity to play rugby here. So never would have known or imagined or anticipated any of those things happening, that day when I first rolled into the gym, not really having any idea what I was getting myself into. But, it's also something that I can't imagine changing. Taking rugby out of my life would have set me on a totally different path, introduced me to so many different people. It's hard to even imagine what it would look like without having those experiences and relationships through rugby.
Yeah, not to mention being on a national Duluth commercial, right?
That's right. See, I've also gotten to be a TV star. I was in a magazine ad, so I'm adding a whole list of modeling and acting to my rugby career as well.
Exactly. What are your tips for athletes that want to get better, that want to make it to the next level, whether that level is Division 3, 2, 1, national team? What's your tips for them?
You have to learn whatever you can about the sport. There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of folks who are willing to impart their knowledge. You just have to ask and you have to do the work. I'm always amazed at how many folks have never actually read the rules of rugby. So, those are out there. They're posted on the internet for all to find. So, you don't need to necessarily travel really far to, work with an expert. If you have the opportunity, that's amazing. But there's a lot of things that you can do on your own. There's a lot of things to train, both just kind of general fitness and rugby specific. But it's going to take work. So using the resources that are available to you, and asking folks for support. I'm always, happy to answer questions and mentor. I know a lot of the, experienced rugby folks in the league are as well. So we are only as good as our athletes. So wanting to build up folks who really have that desire and interest in taking their game to the next level.
Yeah. Yes, Steve, there's rules. Yes, there is. Yes, there are. Give me your favorite moment.
Thinks that high pointers just follow wherever the low pointers go.
Give me your favorite moment in wheelchair rugby.
That was a hard one to think about. I think one that does stand out, though, was when we were in France for the World Women's Cup in 2017. And so we had a group of 4 American women and then 1 woman from Brazil who made up the Americas, kind of the continental team. And we were playing against Team France. So, of course, we were in France. They had, a lot of support there. They were used to playing with each other because they'd practiced before. And we were a group of women who never, played together, and we didn't speak a common language with our Brazilian teammate. And so being able to compete in that game, it was a super, super close game. That was my first opportunity to really coach a team in a tournament. I'd coached the clinic before, so it was my first coaching experience, and it came down to the wire, last minute goal, and we beat them by 1. So just a really great opportunity to compete against another team of women, to come together, with women that I knew from the U.S. And a woman that was new to us, and again, overcoming that language barrier. A coaching success for me, and athletic success, just really captured a lot of the elements of rugby that are really powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. That's a great moment for sure. Well, Emily, thank you so much for being on the show. We got a little rapid fire wrap up to wrap it up. Well, get to know Emily. 1-word answers, super quick. These are going to be easy. So, what is your favorite board game?
Life.
Oh, we play with our kids all the time. If you could teach one subject in school, what would it be?
Rugby. Does that count? I'm going to make it my own class.
Oh, that's fantastic. Sure. What's your favorite beverage?
I've got some apple cider in my fridge right now that I'm super enjoying.
Oh, yeah. The best compliment you've ever received? Besides when I told you that you
I was gonna say, that was kind of a compliment.
You damn right it was. Yeah.
I'll add that one of the women that I did mentor, did share some thoughts about the impact that I've had on her life as a woman with a disability, and a rugby player that really meant a lot to me.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What's your favorite birthday cake?
Carrot cake.
Favorite movie?
Princess Bride.
What's one thing you still have from your childhood?
A stuffed animal, a little stuffed dog.
Oh. What is your favorite holiday?
Probably Easter.
And what is something you'll not be doing in 10 years? Something you'll not be doing in 10 years.
Quarantining.
Yeah, let's hope not. That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Well, Emily, thank you so much for being on. If you want to find out more about Emily and the crazy acro she does, you can go to Instagram and go to @acrowheels. She's at @acrowheels on Twitter. She's at Emily, EMILY SK. No, she completely butchered that. My wife typed that.
You will not find me on Twitter at the
handle
posted there.
Yeah,
but I don't tweet much anyway, so Instagram is the best way to find me.
Like Emily mentioned, the University of Houston is huge for clinics, specifically Dr. Cottingham and the adaptive sports program there. So checking that out if you're a woman that is interested in going to the clinic, hopefully happening next summer. Talk to Emily over at Instagram at @acrowheels, and she'll be able to hook that up for you. Shout out to Halliburton Foundation that sponsors those clinics quite a bit and sponsors the Wonder Woman team. Absolutely big. So any other information that you want to find out about wheelchair rugby, go to usawr.org as well as usqra.org for the domestic league. Emily, thank you so much for being on. Everyone have an awesome rest of your week.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Great to chat with you.